Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast, a 3-time award-winning show that aims to motivate and inspire you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you're passionate about adventure, challenge and learning from women who have overcome obstacles and achieved remarkable things, then this is the podcast for you. Every Tuesday at 7 a.m, new episodes go live featuring incredible women who share their stories, insights and tips to help you achieve your dreams and goals. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron. Visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me with Tough Girl Challenges, give shout outs and recommend other Tough Girl Podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Preet Chandi. I'm from Derby, but generally just all over the place. I did 16 years in the British Army and I left in November. And now I guess I would say I'm an adventurer, which, I have to think about sometimes when people ask me what I do. I'm like, I'm not in the army anymore. But that's a little bit about me. And I've done some big expeditions in Antarctica and hopefully a few more in the Arctic to come.
Oh, fantastic. Now, we first spoke to you, it seems so long ago.
I know.
July 8th, 2021. And that's almost like when the beginning of your polar journey began. So we learned more about, who is Preet, the army, doing 30-hour endurance events, taking on the Marathon des Sables, the power of writing things down, and then talking about Antarctica and the different skills and logistics and knowledge that you needed to gain, like actually having to go out and gain more winter experience and you booking a trip over to Iceland to gain glacier experience and then doing your polar training courses. And that was the very, very beginning. And unfortunately, we spoke to you again a couple of years later, February 15th, 2022, when you became the first woman of colour to reach the South Pole. And you shared more about completing the 700 miles in 40 days and pulling all your own kit and equipment and the different challenges that you faced when you're out there, talking about fears and concerns and the excitement and the joy and typical days, but the mental side of it. We covered a lot of stuff over those years. Let's jump back. Sorry, that was me speaking very quickly then.
That's cool.
But for people listening, go back and listen to the first 2 episodes. So you said something on the introduction, which was you are now a former army officer. What deciding to leave the army, how did that come about? Was that an easy decision, a hard decision? Because you've been in there for 15, 16 years or something?
Yeah, I don't think it was an easy decision. So I was in the Army Reserves for 8 years, so part-time Army. And I remember wanting to go regular and wanting it so much. I still, because it's quite competitive, there's not that many physios who are serving in the regular Army. They don't, and not that many get in each year, so it's quite competitive. And I remember going to the interview and sitting down for the board, and I still remember the phone call. And it was the same day where he was like, I'm so-and-so and I'm calling from, and I'm like, I know who you are, I didn't say that, but I want to know if I got in, and him telling me that I got in. And I remember that moment. I remember thinking, this is it for me. I'm going to be a lifer. I got into the full-time army, the financial security, the security all over. I was so excited and so proud. And I loved being in, I really did. And I found that it encouraged me to push my boundaries. I think that's, I joined the reserves when I was 19. So it part of me grew up through the military. But I found the more that I wanted to do things outside of the army, the more it was challenging. And that came with the expeditions. So I always say to people, I didn't do the expeditions through the army, but I don't think I would have had the idea had I not been in the army, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously you would have just gained so many different skills from being in the army and the amazing connections and just the focus on fitness and mental resilience and just all the different experiences that you got exposed to over there. So making the decision to leave, do you have a plan? Because when did you leave? Quite
in
last
November.
Year?
Yes, last year. So I did wait a little bit. So I did my first expedition. Coming back from that was quite tough. I was in a fair amount of debt after that trip, and I went straight back to work, and then trying to take unpaid leave to do my second expedition was really challenging. And I think I was about to go into something really hard anyway, and as much as I've loved being in the military, it's hard to try and get that unpaid leave off. There were a lot of people who who kind of put barriers in place. And don't get me wrong, there were definitely people who supported me too, but trying to fight kind of the sides of people who were putting the barriers in place. And then I ended up taking a career break, and I did my third expedition without telling anybody at all. And after that, I thought now's time, I think, for me to leave and go on and do other things. But I'll continue to be an advocate for the military. It's given me a lot. And yeah, I'm really glad to have served.
You headed back to do your third expedition, and that one you kept sort of pretty quiet, like under the radar.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit more about that and maybe your reasons for just sort of keeping that sort of under the radar?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll go back a little bit because I think it was because of my second trip. So I did my first trip, 700 miles to the South Pole, and then I tried to cross the landmass in Antarctica as my second trip. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was 70 days, 922 miles, and I didn't actually make it to the other side. And I made mistakes early on that really, really made me suffer. And I felt like I dug this hole that I just couldn't get out of. And don't get me wrong, the conditions were hard. You know, there's all these external factors, but you can't control the external factors. I know there are other things that I didn't do well that made it harder for me, to the point where I had a polar thigh, like an injury on my left calf. I got quite bad neck pain from pushing too hard. I had one tablet of pain relief left for the last 14 days, which I took in the last 48 hours. And I didn't enjoy any of that trip. It was incredibly hard. And I've never been in a position before where I thought to myself, I don't know if I can keep going. And I had that in that trip the last week. I just didn't know if I could keep going. And then I didn't make it. I didn't make the end. I was just over 100 miles off. And I was incredibly disappointed. And, you know, I've got this little voice in my head telling me that I failed the whole way round. And it was a struggle. Like, everything about that trip was a struggle. I remember by the time I finished, it was pure relief that it was over. And I got 2 records from that trip. So it was a longer solo unsupported one-way polar ski expedition for the female record and the male record too. And I think I had mixed feelings about that as well, because obviously I didn't finish the trip. And when I got back, people were super positive, like 99% were super positive. And, you know, and most people didn't even mention that I'd failed to reach the end. And I did fail. Some people would say to me, you didn't fail, you know, but I did fail, and that's okay. It's okay to fail. Like, I didn't mean to finish where I did. And there was about 1%. I remember reading this article about me, and it absolutely slated me. Talked about how, you know, the only reason I would have kept going was to get a record, and I'm obviously just one of these arrogant people coming in to, you know, basically get records. And I read it, like, it was a very quick turnaround out of Antarctica, probably within the first 24 hours. And I was not in a good place. I think I was quite broken. And I read it, and I think I was distraught anyway. But I was so worried that that's what people in the adventure community thought of me. And as somebody who has been in a lot of spaces where I didn't really initially feel like I belonged, you know, I joined the military, and I did belong in those spaces, but it's hard when you first go into them. I then became an officer in the military, and, you know, I then have come into this adventure space almost at a side on, or that's what it felt like anyway. So I found that really challenging. And that year, I mean, I had surgery then in February on my leg. I just struggled that year. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, I wonder if I could get the female speed record. Now, you know, when people are categorized often in these trips, you've got your skiers and your non-skiers. And I was kind of in the non-skier category. The female speed record had been literally that year, same year as my second trip, had gone down to, 33 days, a phenomenal, like, record. And no one really thought that I would be able to get it. And to be honest, I didn't know if I could get it either. And I think I just wanted to do this a little bit in a more of a personal way. And this way I would cut any criticisms or, like, the pressure as well. And you know what? It was a beautiful trip. It was an absolutely beautiful trip. I got the record in the same year as the trip that I failed, so the 28th of December. And I remember finishing and again reading about myself in one of these articles, and it said, you know, don't know why she didn't tell anybody. she probably went when she had better weather or something. And it actually made me feel better because I thought to myself, no matter what you do, there will always be people who make you feel like you don't belong. And I told myself, you know what, Preet, you do belong. You've just got this speed record, not because you're the best skier. There's no chance someone who learned as an adult and was probably like walking on these skis for my first 2 trips. But you don't have to be the best to succeed. And that's so important to me. And, you know, I wasn't born into this, you know, adventure community. I'm learning as I've gone on, and it's important for me to, you know, hopefully do things the right way, but not everybody wants to let you into their club. I am always learning from people. You don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. And yeah, the third trip for me, I think it had been a lot over those 2 years. Doing my first trip, coming back in a lot of debt, going straight back to work. You know, then the second trip, which I came back from quite broken, I think, and that I struggled with. That year, 2023, was a really tough year, and I didn't really, I couldn't understand why I was struggling. And even though I knew, you know, if you think about it, I'd lost 20 kilograms of fat and muscle. I wasn't, you know, I was physically not great. But even as I was physically starting to heal, mentally, it's like something wasn't quite sitting right. But I don't know if I'd even recovered from my first trip. So, and then gone into quite an intense period back at work. So it was probably the accumulation of both. And hence why I think the third one I wanted to do differently, just to give myself a break, concentrate on the trip. And that's what I did. I didn't do any blogs when I was on the trip either. And, you know, it's the pros and cons of both. I love that people follow the journey. So they didn't have any of that either. Nobody was really, apart from the couple of people that knew I was on the trip, followed the journeys. But on the flip side of it, it was a really calm journey, and it was kind of cherry on the top for me. You know, I got there and I was like, you know what, Preet, you do belong in this space, and don't let anybody make you feel like you don't.
That sounds like it's almost like a reset for you.
Yeah.
With the weight loss, like the fat and the muscle, I think it also does affect your brain, because
Yes.
like you will have gone into starvation mode,
Yeah.
and like that, and because you're in this all like a nothing environment, it's a, you know, there's not there's not mountain views to look at. It's
Yes.
literally
Yeah.
like ice and sky and some clouds and the sun. Like there's just it's like a void as such. Obviously, talking to someone who's never been there, but like, you know, just like completely empty. That, to me, I'm just hearing burnout, like just
Yes.
physical, mental, emotional
Yeah.
burnout, but not having the ability to stop. Like it's
Yeah.
almost like you've just pushed on through. Have you taken time out since? Like, are you feeling recovered now?
Yeah, so now I am. I think the problem was, so, you know, I came back from my first trip, and even then when I wasn't quite feeling right, I didn't know what it was, and pile on the debt as well. So I come back, I finished my first trip, 3rd of Jan 2022. I'm in all of this debt. I do pretty much, I've got a week or two, I'm doing interviews back to back. And then I go into 4 months of school talks where I'm doing 4 or 5 talks a day, or 3, 4 talks a day. I'm week in the Midlands, week in London, week in Northern Ireland. And don't get me wrong, I love talking to young people, but I was exhausted, but I didn't know what was wrong with me. Even then, I remember thinking, I don't know what's wrong with me. I finished that and I go straight to my next posting, in Aylesbury. Great job, but again, it was busy. The job was busy, and I still had sponsor commitments to the people that I'd paid for my trip. And I'm trying to raise money for my next trip, and I'm trying to apply for unpaid leave from the military to do my next trip. You know, I then finish work and I go straight back to Antarctica for phase 2. So I don't think I had actually recovered from my first trip before then going into my second trip, which was so much harder. And that trip did break me. That trip, without a doubt, did break me. And I think probably I was still broken going into my third trip, but it was managed much better, and I'd taken away some things. So I haven't really told many people, you know, so that I think I was like, this is just, you know, you're just going, you're doing this trip. So I don't have that external pressure really. Funding was still hard. And I had to actually borrow money to do the trip, which was a risk, which did pay off, but still a risk. And I remember getting to the pole and, you know, having beaten the speed record by over a day, and just, I was like, wow, that, you know, it was a pretty amazing feeling. And just I think also just know somebody like me could go and do something like that. And then it's funny, I wanted to go. I then got married. I came back and it was my wedding in March. And we went to northern Canada for our honeymoon because I wanted to train to go to the North Pole. And I really wanted to go the year after. So I really wanted to go this year. And I think I'm really glad I didn't. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it was my choice in that sense. I I had nowhere near the funding and all the things I needed, but I think I needed the break. And I think that gave me the break because that was then my first year off of, having a big trip. And you're right, it takes a lot out of you. And even after I did the speed, in my head, I was just like, oh, it was much shorter than any of my other trips because I did it in 31 days. So I'm okay. And I'm so impatient with myself and have to remind myself, okay, you still need to recover. It was still a big trip. And and my granddad had passed away while I was on the ice. And nobody told me until I finished. And so I finished the trip. And the day after, I was told. And they'd had the funeral, and then I went back to Derby, and they waited for me to spread the ashes, and that was really sad. My granddad, he lived a long age. He was alive till he was 80, which is amazing, and he was a really avid supporter. He would take laminated newspaper cuttings of me to the pubs in Derby, which was great. But it was just really sad not to be able to be there, at the funeral when everybody's together kind of celebrating his life. So there's definitely things that you miss. But then I just remind myself how proud he was of everything. And sorry, very long-winded way of answering your question. Yes, I do feel like I've had the recovery period now.
I think it's interesting because, when you look back to the start, even just getting things off the ground, getting things moving, and then you get this ball rolling, and it is like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you've got the momentum. You've got, you've got the knowledge, you've got the experience, you've got the connections, you know what you're doing, you know where you're going, you know what has to be done. And because you've got the momentum, I can understand why it'd be so hard to stop and to take a break. And maybe then, the feelings of guilt might, well, if I stop, will I ever be able to get back out here again? Or do I have to keep on pushing now? Like, is this my moment? And, I've got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with the speed record, it's something that, probably I had in the back of my mind. Funny enough, I didn't think that I would try that same year. I thought maybe I'd wait a year. And then I'd been rehabbing anyway because of my injuries. And I think I just thought, actually, you don't would I be able to get the funding without announcing, which, I couldn't get all of it. But again, I took that risk and it did pay off. I'm glad I did it that way in the end. And the trip was different. I was like, well, people are checking my location every day, but, not everybody's watching while I'm on the ice. This is just, you're here. I would do my check-ins on my satellite phone and it was just the basics. And you know what, Sarah, that trip, I slept 8 hours every night. Which is funny because I've never done that on my first 2 trips, which is always a mistake. Like I was so scared in my second trip. I was so scared of failing. And that fear made me, kind of caused me to make mistakes and push too hard early on. And I just made it harder for myself. Whereas that third one, I think I learned from my mistakes, and it was easier. And then the North is just, it's just a different ball game completely. And it's like with anything, the more time you have, then the more I'll learn, the more, I'll learn from other people around me. Like I didn't really know much about the North Pole to start with, kind of like with everything I do. That's okay though. You can start from any point and you can learn about anything you want and then go for it.
I want to go back to your second trip because I actually think this is really powerful, and especially the way that you talked about it, because it's that awkward word, and it shouldn't be awkward, is that failure, because you set out to complete the total crossing, and it's almost like, well, what's 100 miles, and you still got 2 records, but it's like, I know how much you wanted that record, and there must have been, well, actually, that I was gonna verge 2 things, but you said you made a couple of mistakes and
Yes.
you were pushing too hard. Looking back now, are you able to to pinpoint, say, actually, that was the
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
100%.
Oh.
There's a few things early on. So I was like with anything, you're nervous to get started. I'm in Chile. I've packed my gear, and we had some delays into getting into Antarctica, which is completely normal. The weather. Anyway, by the time I got to Union Glacier, I wanted to start the next day because I only have 70 days for this trip. And the reason I only have 70 days is that's the summer season over. So, my pickup is the day before the last passenger flight out of Antarctica for the logistics company. So I'm keen to start and get on my stuff. And I was rushing, and the day the plane drops me off, fuel had spilt. I had my stove board ready and fuel had spilt in that bag. And I was like, oh, Preet, how could you have let that happen? So I sort that out. Not a great start. And I decided just to start anyway and not put my tent up and just reset, which I probably should have. But again, I'm worried, I don't have much time. I've got to get going. And I hit some storms early on, which I knew were coming, like I'd heard from the logistics company. And instead of stopping early, I pushed through. And I know that was a mistake. But again, I have that voice in my head telling me I'm so scared that I'm going to fail and people are going to call me a failure. I've made such a big deal about this trip. And so I pushed through. I wasn't moving very much. I wasn't hitting much mileage at the start, which is normal. My sled is heavy. It's 120 kilos. But I kept telling myself, just push through. So I was doing like 15 hours, 5 hours sleep, 16 hours, 4 hours sleep, just silly hours at the start of a very big trip, telling myself that I would correct it, after a week or so, like once I'm back on track. And I just didn't. And, the hole had been dug and I just struggled to get out of it. So I actually injured my neck like 3 days into this trip, which is so silly because I'm pushing forward hard, looking down at my compass through storms. And it was pretty much purely musculoskeletal, a strain. But I then started using my pain relief before I thought I would. And I didn't take pain relief thinking I would be using it from day 3. So I start having to then ration that early on. Then I get this polar thigh injury on my left calf, like a couple of weeks in, the wind and the cold. I'll be honest here. I don't really know how I could have prevented that because, I never wear tight fitted clothing. I've got my merino wool layers. I've got the 3 layers, but the wind was hitting me on that side just for a couple of weeks. And, I saw this bruise on my leg. When I thought it was a bruise, I'd fallen a few times. Turns out then it started to scab. And I was really annoyed at myself. So it's just another thing that I now have to deal with. So I've started putting steroid cream on. And then I called the doctors on the sat phone. So I then put Granuflex on, which I left on my leg. So I've got these 2 injuries now that I'm having to manage quite early on in this trip. My hours are still everywhere, like 16 hours, 5 hours sleep, 17 hours, 6 hours sleep. Like I wasn't in a routine like I should be. And then on the other side of the pole, so it took me much longer to get to the pole than I thought I would. Other side, I start skiing for 24 hours a day. And that's because I know I've only got 14 days left. And I think I just thought if there's ever a time you're going to push, it's now. And the thing is, I wasn't in a good state then anyway. And then I start pushing 24 hours a day and I trick myself, I've got 24 hours a day, like I do 12 hours and I tell myself your day's just starting, do another 12 hours. And then I was sleeping a little bit longer than 7-8 hours, but then 24 hours skiing. And I was doing 2 hours before each stop. My neck was so bad. I'm like physically using my ski poles to lift my head up. I'm falling like 14 times every 2 hours. My posture's terrible. I've got that 1 tablet of pain relief left. I had a codeine tablet, which I kept in my top left pocket. And then the mistakes were just happening more and more. So to name a few, in the last probably week or so, my stove was running quite low. And I would have probably just had to take it apart, look at what the issue was, put it back together. I just didn't have the energy to do it. So instead, I let it run low and just kind of had lukewarm water in the end because obviously it was taking so long to boil. Every day you put hot water in your thermos, and then you put some of that hot water in the kettle so it doesn't burn the bottom when you start to cook, and then you add snow to that. One day, obviously, I hadn't closed the cap properly or something along those lines. Anyway, it was frozen. The whole bottle, the thermos was frozen. So I then had to use the other side of my spoon to stab it to try and get like these specks of ice out, which would fall into my kettle. And then we're just burning the kind of bottom of the kettle. On my last this is like, because I saw this like little dot in the distance, and it was like, I think it still took me about 8-9 hours to get there, but it's a plane in the distance. And, eventually I'm getting closer and closer, and I really needed to go for a wee. So I look for my shiwi, which is always in the same pocket, like, always. And I look for it and it's not there. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, where could it be? So then I have to unzip everything, like the sides, take my skis off, squat, which is really hard work. Like, I'm moving in slow motion at this point, go for a wee eventually. And I looked for that shiwi afterwards. It was in the same spot that it always is. A couple of days from my finish, I couldn't open my food pot. No, sorry, not a couple of days. This was the last day. I couldn't open my food pot, which is where I normally put my food and the hot water into. So I ended up just eating straight out of my kettle. And it just, they just added up. I was not in a good place, and I'm making and this is just like the obvious mistakes even before that. I'm moving so slowly towards the end as well, so slowly. And I remember just thinking, I don't even know if I can do the next 2 hours. And then I tell myself, well, you just did the last 2 hours, so you can do the next 2 hours. But I am moving in slow motion. And eventually, when I got to the end where they were to pick me up, and again, this is just a random spot they've picked, that is that obviously they're tracking my location that they thought I could get to in the time that I had, which is where they're waiting for me, the logistics staff. So Rob Smith is there, who was one of the Ailey guides, and I remember just hugging him at the end, just crying, saying like it was so hard. And yeah, just the relief for it to be finished, really, because I like, even now, like, I'll look back at photos of myself then, and I wasn't doing well at all. I remember I had this frost nip on my nose, and even like, it's not even the trip, even just coming back from the trip, like, we really struggled to get from the domestic airport in Chile to the international airport. Luckily, the last passenger flight, there was a lot of Ailey staff who then helped me. My legs were swelling, my injury, the pain had gone up like quite a lot, but I think the temperature changed and it was leaking through the dressing, and I just was struggling, and I knew that there was going to be a few people there to interview me as I got out of Heathrow Airport. So I went to the bathroom before I peeled off the frost nip on my nose, which you shouldn't do. And I don't know why, Sarah, but I got a mascara and an eyeliner and put that on. And it's so funny because I'm like, not that you could tell. I don't know why I was so worried about, I think I knew that I didn't look great. And I was so worried about, how others would perceive me. I think I still had this huge fear that, everyone's going to say like she failed and so on. And I did fail, but it's one of the best failures I've ever had in my life. And I think a little bit of distance gives me that in perspective, because at the time I didn't feel that way. But without that failure, I don't think I ever could have got the speed record. And it's not because I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. I'm trying not to look back with rose-tinted glasses, because that trip was so hard. And well, I probably went into it a bit broken, and it just broke me so much further. But man, being in that discomfort, and it was more than discomfort, every day, and then afterwards, which was very challenging, there was a lot of growth on the other side of that. So I'm really glad to have gone through it. And even if someone said, would you do that trip again, knowing the results would be the same, I would do it. I wouldn't enjoy it, but I would do it.
It sounds as though it's been very traumatic growth. And I mean, just the daily pain cave that you must have been in with your neck and with the polar
Yeah.
that dealing with that sense of failure, having the expectations of so many people, knowing that your journey is so public. That's a hell of a lot of mental pressure to have on you. And I suppose when you came back, did you have any support or someone to talk to? Because it just sounds like beyond. Yeah, well, to be honest, it's the words I'm using. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just really traumatic being alone for that length of time and dealing with all of those mental sort of, and the physical and the emotional challenges. Like, have you spoken to someone about it?
So I didn't in that year, which would have been useful. I think at the time, again, it's hard to know what is wrong. I think, I'm glad I had the injury, because I then had some medical leave, and I don't know how I would have managed without that medical leave. I think that, it made me slow down. Like I had to. I physically, genuinely couldn't walk more than 2 minutes without getting breathless. I mean, I found that hard anyway, because I think I use physical activity to help me mentally. So not being able to do that, I was struggling as well. And it was an uncomfortable time. I mean, I'm trying to think how I actually managed to get through it. And it was just day by day. Like I remember buying coloring books for myself. I was trying to just binge watch stuff on Netflix, and I just didn't find anything helped. I didn't use a coloring book in the end, even though I bought it, to try and help. And then, of course, don't forget, I still have all the sponsor commitments and things. So I was doing those, but I find that I can switch on. I can switch on for the things that I need to do. And it was in between that I found really hard. When I then was doing a little bit more rehabilitation, I started to probably feel a bit better. Like I enjoy the fresh air. I think, I feel like it's so good for my mental health. And funny enough, it wasn't until after the third trip that I started speaking to somebody, a sports psychologist, because they were doing some research on something else. And I just emailed afterwards and I said, I've enjoyed talking to you. Like if you wanted to work together. And it was great. And I thought, oh man, this would have been helpful before my trips or after some of my hard trips. But, let's be honest here, like these trips are insanely expensive and things cost money. So what do it's fair enough saying that, yes, all of these things will be helpful. Help is helpful. But every bit of money I had went towards the trip. And, I'm sure there are people who are willing to help without money, but then trying to find those people is challenging. And, of course, people will charge for their services. That's normal to do.
I was going to say, and it's also the time, because if that's an hour, even if you're doing it, say, online or whatever, that's an hour out of your day. That's an hour that you're not planning, researching, connecting, or an hour training. And there are only so many hours in the day, and you do have a job and you do have commitments. And actually, sometimes you probably fall to the bottom of your to-do list in terms of, well, actually, I can deal with that later. That's not a priority at the moment, maybe.
And it's also finding the right person. So luckily, one of the people who contacted me for this research they were doing, this was and I actually really enjoyed talking to him. And then I contacted him afterwards saying, would you be happy to work together? So, but finding the right person's hard work. So trying to do all of that is a lot as well. You're right. That year I found really difficult. And I think it was an accumulation of not just that trip, the one before, probably even preparing for the trip before that. And then not being able to go north this March forced me to have a little bit of time where I haven't immediately got, or, less than a year, basically, got a big trip that I'm trying to do, even though I'm continuously trying to raise money. But but it's given me time to do other things, which is good.
Which is good. It is good. It is important. Take us to the so trip 3. You're on the speed record. When you know that you are going to beat the speed record and come in, what did that feel like for you? When did you know? Like, did you know that you would beat the record?
No. And I never let myself believe I would. I told myself, you do not even think that you're going to get it until you touch the pole. You have not got it. You are not. Yeah. So I never, and I think part of that's probably from my second trip, right? I didn't make it. So do not believe that you're going to get it until you are there. And this is quite funny. And considering I've done 2 big trips in Antarctica already, I should know better, but I counted day 0 as day 1. So in my head, I'm like super close to the current record and I have to really push hard to get it. So like the last day, I'm like, no, but I'm really close. And obviously what I counted as day 1 was actually day 0. So I was a day ahead, which I didn't realize until I got to the South Pole, which, it's quite funny. But I got there and there were three people there who work for Ailey, who was great to see. People that I know, Colleen Devon as a South Pole manager. And it was, It's amazing to get there. It is. I got there. They were celebrating with me. I got my sat phone out to call my husband, and then my sat phone died. But I think he got that I was there, and then went back on the skidoo to the little camp area, and like had hot food. And you're wired. And I realize that I'm always talking lots. I'm like on just talking so much, and it's like 3:30 in the morning or whatever, like super early. And I find, because I've done that trip a couple of times now in Antarctica, that I don't, even though I'm really tired, even after my second trip, I don't sleep much. It's hunger. It's always the hunger. So I wake up wanting food. I finish a big trip and I will sleep for 2-3 hours and I'll wake up to get food. So it's always food that I want more than anything over sleep.
Talk to me about the next big challenge, the North Pole, and what is involved and what you're raising funds for and what that is going to look like.
I thought, I've been to the South Pole. I wonder if I could go to the North Pole. and it's pretty true because, again, I think of it so casually. I wonder if I could go to the North Pole, not knowing anything about the North Pole. And then you start to learn about the North Pole. I contact people who know anything about it because, again, where do you start? Luckily, I have a few contacts through doing Antarctica now. So I asked them, who are the people to speak to? Who can I go to learn from? Obviously, it's very different from Antarctica. Antarctica is, the trips I've done are on land, and there are research companies in Antarctica. There are different research stations. There's logistics companies that, I've gone through to do my trips. The geographic North Pole is in the middle of the sea. It's covered with sea ice over parts of the year. I will aim to start in March because that's the only time the aircraft will drop me off. And then I would hopefully get picked up 60 days later from the geographic North Pole. It is insanely hard. So I'll be starting from Canada. The way the sea has been shifting, at the start, when I start from Canada, there'll be like big blocks of ice, like a maze almost, that I have to kind of climb over. There'll be pressure ridges. I'll have 2 sleds, so I'll go with one and then come back for the other sled. And then once I've managed to get through those stages, there'll be sections of open water where I will literally have to put an immersion suit on, get in the water, swim to the other side, get my ice picks, climb out, and then bring my sleds across, which also float. I will have to carry a firearm and flares because there are polar bears there. And again, I just use those to scare the bears away. So hopefully that they don't come too close to me. No female has ever done it solo, and no one has done it solo for, I think it's 10 years now. And it's it's an incredibly challenging trip. Now, I think what I really want to say here is there's a high chance of failure on this trip, right? I don't have anything special that people before me, didn't have. There's nothing like that at all. There's a high chance of failure, but you cannot fail unless you try. And also, I'm learning from everyone that has been there already. I will take anything I can get from anyone really, because everyone has so much knowledge already. And you don't know what you don't know. But I want to do this trip even if I don't make it very far. And I think a lot of that has come from what I've learned from my second trip. And it's okay to go into something, even if you know you're not going to reach the end goal. It's still powerful to try. It's still, an amazing place to go and do. And I knew nothing of this world at all. I knew nothing of the polar world. I didn't know what an adventurer and an explorer was, and how amazing to go and try. And it is insanely expensive. It's way more than anything I've done in Antarctica. And that's because I'm basically having to charter the plane myself. There isn't a logistics company out there that I can use currently anyway. So it's something else. It really is. I think the first 2 weeks is going to be harder than anything I've ever done, genuinely. Again, from what I've been told, the first couple of weeks is the hardest. It's about -50. Obviously, there's hours of darkness just with the pressure ridges and the ice. I think it's going to be a little bit miserable at the start. And I'm not going into it thinking, I don't enjoy misery, although it might sound that way. I think it is going to be really, really hard. So I'm trying to prepare for that, which is a challenge. How do you prepare for something that's harder than anything you've ever done before?
And how do you prepare for the misery and the suffering? I mean, people do talk about pain caves, maybe more so like in trail running. And actually, I had a bit of an epiphany when I can't remember who was talking about their pain cave, but instead of it, so in my head, it's just this place that you go and it's dark and blah, blah, blah. Whereas actually this person, they talked about their pain cave, and it's something that they've created in their mind. Like it's this massive visual, like palace or whatever with thousands of rooms going off it that they go into. And it's like this whole other world that they can mentally escape to. Do you have a pain cave? What does it look like?
I'm not sure. I love that, first of all. So I can I might definitely try that. But I think I'm trying to give it perspective as well. Like, this is what a privilege for me to be able to be here, you know? Like, how amazing that me, a Punjabi girl from Derby, has managed to get to the start point. Wow. And it is, Sarah, stunning. Like, and it's funny because anytime in Antarctica I saw like parts that were more stunning, I thought, oh, this is going to be hard to get over. But it will visually be quite stunning. So I think part of me is trying to appreciate that side of it as well, right? So it's not, I've never thought you conquer nature at all. You know, I think I ask nature to allow me safe passage, and you know, so far, thankfully, it has. But I think it's hard to prepare for. For me, I'm going to try and go to the Arctic early next year just to get myself used to that type of cold and wet, and then just sit in it. And it's not, you know, sit in this like, I guess, misery, this feeling, and just keep going. Like, I don't know that I can get to the point that I enjoy it, if I'm honest with you. I can try, but I don't know. I think for me, I almost lied to myself a little bit. So the first week I'd tell myself it's a training trip. And then the second week I'd tell myself I'm still on a training trip. And that's the most I'll get away with. By the third week, I'll know I'm lying to myself. so I don't think I'd be able to do it, but that's what I tell myself. And I guess maybe in terms of pressure, that helps as well. I'm just here, I'm training, you know, I'm on a training trip, and that's what I'll be doing earlier in the year anyway. So I'll have something mentally to go back to. I've been doing these week trips. That's okay. And I think that's what I'm going to do. But I do like the sound of that palace. So I might have a think about that and see if I can build a palace for myself, because that sounds way more enjoyable.
I can hear excitement in your voice about it though. Like when, like talking about it, it's like, it's the possibility, because also, why not you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is one of the first things I've done where I'll say I probably need a fair amount of luck. And that's because of the conditions, man. You know, this is a place I will put my tent up to sleep and I could wake up in a different place. So,
You might wake up in the top of the North Pole.
can you imagine? If only, if it just that way, that would be amazing. She got that quick, yeah. That would be great. So I definitely do need some luck there. And I'm excited to start. I'm excited to try, because, you know, even if there is that 1%, less than 1% chance, there is still that less than 1% chance. And can you imagine, like, if I'm successful, I'd be the first woman to ski solo to the North and South Poles. And for somebody like me, you know, and I say someone like me, I mean someone who's come from immigrants, someone who didn't know anything about adventure, joined the army without telling anyone in my family, because it wasn't the thing that you're supposed to do. You know, there are still, you know, a fair amount of people who think me getting married is my biggest achievement. And I just want to show so much that you can go and do anything. Even if I don't make it, you go and you try, you know. And this trip, like every other trip, it's bigger than me, you know, and hopefully I'll show you that through my blogs. I've just set up my community interest company, which is called Adventurous Hours. So there'll be some grants I'm giving out while I'm on the ice, and under 10s and mid-age and over 60s, and a sustainability grant, because adventure is for everyone and it can be anything. And there'll be a school syllabus part of it. And, you know, hopefully I'll be able to get people to move while I'm moving, whatever the distance. And just, yeah, you know, it's about so much more than just me. And I feel like I carry, you know, I have people with me. I'm alone on the ice, but I never walk alone. I carry, you know, my family with me. I carry my culture, my heritage. I carry the generations of people who came before me. It's about so much more than just me.
And we've both got, I think you've got a niece as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
And so like so I didn't have any children, but I do have a niece and nephews. But for me, it's role models. It's like, you probably want your niece growing up to think, well, my auntie's been to the South.
Yeah.
My auntie's been to the South Pole. My auntie's been to the North Pole. My auntie's run marathons. Well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. and it becomes a norm. And how amazing is that for that to be the norm? That's like, it's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. You know, my mum, bless her, like when she had me, she just wanted me to be able to have, you know, some choice. You know, she never, and I just, it's incredible, isn't it? Like as generations go on, like the different opportunities we can have. And you know, I'm very driven. I'm a bit of a pusher, or as I prefer to say, an encourager. And, you know, I really do want to break that glass ceiling.
And you're smashing it, which is amazing. Preet, where can people connect with you? How can they follow along? How can they support you? Where should they go?
You can go to polarpreet.com. Instagram is polarpreet. Like everything will be on there, or my GoFundMe links. And if you know any billionaires, let me know.
And also, I just want to say massive congratulations, because you're now MBE. You're a member of the Order of the British Empire in the Queen's Birthday's honours. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What does that mean? Does that mean anything? I mean,
yeah,
I know it does mean something.
No, it does. It's really special. I think, you know, often when you're doing these trips, you're alone, you know, and then you come back and it's like, wow, seeing the impact in different ways is really incredible. So, and it was the kind of the last, of the Queen's honours that I got that, which was really amazing. And there was a little bit of a wait list to go to the ceremony. So I went just after my second trip, and I've got this like dressing on my leg where I'm waiting to get surgery. But I was there with my family, and it's incredibly special. And, you know, having, you know, served for the 16 years in the military, it's quite the honour to hold.
Did the Queen give you the?
No, it was Princess Anne. So, but it was one of the last ones that she gave out, you know, like in the Queen's birthday honours. So yeah.
No, incredibly special. And I mean, pretty honestly, like I look back over the past couple of years and just what you have achieved. And I hope you look back as well and just really reflect and think, my God, you've done phenomenal. And it's not, and by the way, the records are phenomenal and the awards are phenomenal, because you've received, you know, Inspirational and Women of the Year and Women in Defense and Explorer of the Year. You've got so many different awards, but it's just the fact that you had this dream, this idea, and you made it happen. You went out there and you have achieved all of this. And it's been honestly amazing to follow your journey over the past, God, how many years is it? 5, 6 years or something that you've been, oh no, it's only like 4. 4 years. It feels like so much longer. But honestly, absolutely inspiring and incredible. And you've already dropped so many incredible, you know, top tips and advice, but I'd love for you to have the final words of advice for other women who are thinking, you know, I do want to challenge myself. I want to take on things which, you know, I might fail, but that's okay. What advice would you like to share? But please don't say just do it. Anything else?
No, I won't. No, first of all, I just want to say bless you and thanks, Sarah, because I remember seeing you after my first trip when I was struggling a little bit, and just kind of the bits of advice you gave me, which I really appreciate, because often when we're in a low space, we can't always see it, and sometimes other people see it much clearer. So thank you for that. And then the advice I want to give to people is not just do it, but I want to tell you that you belong in every room. You belong in every single space. And the first step can be absolutely anything you want it to be. It can be saying something out loud. It can be telling something. But it's just really that you belong, because I have often been in spaces where I felt like I didn't belong. And I have to tell myself quite a lot that I do belong in those spaces.
You do belong 100%. Captain Preet Chandi MBE, thank you so much for coming back on the Tough Girl Podcast Extra and sharing more about what you've been up to and your incredible expeditions, and best of luck with the next one. I'm just excited to follow along.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Hey, tribe, how are you all doing? I hope you're all super well. I've just let out a massive yawn. I don't know why, because I've had what I would call a super sleep. So I went to bed last night at I was in bed for about 8:30, and I was watching a K-drama. And then by about 9 o'clock, 9:30, my eyes were rolling in the back of my head, and I was like, nope, I'm gone. Ended up then going to sleep, waking up at like 2:30 for a little a little bit, and then woke up, went back to sleep, woke up again, went back to sleep, woke up again. I ended up having about 10 hours of sleep, which is ridiculous, but also absolutely amazing. So I'm loving my super sleeps. I hope you're all sleeping super well. Don't know why I started off with that as my little intro, but I suppose it's just to give you an update on what is going on with me. Everything is going really well. and it's so odd because I was chatting with a friend and it's like, how's your training going? That training's really good. How are you sleeping? Sleeping's really good. Everything, I've done loads of great interviews for the Tough Girl podcast, which is fantastic. I've got awesome stories to be sharing. I feel as though I'm managing to balance like my exercise, my supplements, my sleep, my training, my work, everything's going really well. But then what happens is, and I think this is perimenopausal, you start to get a bit anxious. You're like, everything's going too well. Like it can't last. Like I'm starting to get worried about everything being too good, which is obviously not what you want to be happening. But I am absolutely great. And I'm actually reading an awesome book as well. If you follow me on social media, you'll probably know what it is. It's called Adventure Psychology, Going Knowingly into the Unknown. So this is actually edited by Paula Reed and Eric Breimer. But Paula Reed has actually been on the Tough Girl podcast previously. So well worth going to listen to her past episode. But I'll just read you a little bit from it. So in Adventure Psychology, it says, to go on an adventure is to participate in an enduring event requiring sustainable effort where effective performance is measured not only by success, but also by survival. This book brings together the emerging literature in adventure psychology that supports enduring performance and well-being. And to be honest, I think this is what I've been focusing on now for the past year, is probably this wellness, like well-being, longevity. And it is absolutely fascinating. I'm only sort of halfway through. I'm just taking it one chapter at a time because it is academic reading. And so I'm doing my first read through and then I'll read through it again a second time and get my highlighter out and make my little notes. But I honestly feel as though it's adding like a real depth to my understanding of adventure psychology. Another exciting thing that I have done is I've just applied to do a level 2 psychology course at my local college, which I'm also really excited about. So I haven't heard back yet. So fingers crossed that they will reach out to me and accept me onto the course, which will start in January next year. It's a 1 day a week for 16 weeks, but just an opportunity. Psychology is something that I am obviously really interested in. And I thought it'd just be a good opportunity to expand my knowledge in that space. Really hope you've enjoyed this episode with Preet. I think a couple of the things that have really stood out for me is one is just how Preet talks about failure. I think that's really, really powerful. I love the journey that she has been on, and almost like I said during the final bit of the episode, it feels as though Preet has been doing this forever, but actually it's only been over a period of 4 years, and what she has achieved during that time period is amazing. Now, this is the first time that you're listening to Preet. I would really encourage you to go back and listen to the very first episode that we did with Preet, because honestly, it just shows you where her starting point was and the journey that she has been on, where the dream started. I mean, she's always been driven. She's always been ambitious. She does work hard, but where she is now, to be able to listen to where she was in the past, it is absolutely inspiring. So that episode came out on July 8th, 2021. All the links will be in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go and check it out. Now, if you are interested in Polar Explorers, we do have a dedicated Polar Explorers page as well, which again, go and check it out. I've spoken to a lot of different Polar Explorers throughout the years, from Anne Bancroft to Rosie Sansa, Lucy Shepherd, Molly Hughes, Wendy Searle, Felicity Aston. We've spoken to her twice, Anne Daniels, loads of wonderful episodes for you to go and listen to. Now, especially if you're interested in doing your own polar expedition at some point in the future, you can learn so much from these women's journeys. There's also, some more stats that I've included on the resources page as well, just about expedition routes and distances. So please do go check it out, toughgirlchallenges.com, resources section. New episodes of Tough Girl Podcast go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. I am trying to get bonus episodes out on a Thursday. I can't always promise it. So if you subscribe, it means you won't miss out. Thank you again for listening. If you enjoyed what you've heard, please tell one friend about the Tough Girl Podcast. And I'd love for you to support the work that I do. And you can do that by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Or you can visit the Tough Girl website. And on the bottom left-hand side, there is a Support the Tough Girl Podcast with a donation. You can just make a one-off donation via PayPal. It really does make a massive difference and allows me to continue sharing these stories, building this audio library of women in the adventure space. The next goal that we're working towards is 1,000 episodes, 1,000 hours of women in adventure content, which, you know, it's about leaving a legacy for young girls and women growing up so that they grow up knowing what other women have done and achieved, and more importantly, how they have done it. So all that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon.